heard like lots of bangs, and we thought that it was the custodian knocking stuff down. We heard screaming.
Very difficult scene for the family members, for all the responding first responders. It's a tragedy. It's a tragic scene.
We can't tolerate this anymore. These tragedies must end.
Good evening and welcome to RFL. I am Richard French. Tonight, not a political commentator. I am a parent like many of you who just happens to have a microphone and a platform. This evening, we will, together, wrestle with the unimaginable horror that unfolded in Newtown. We're going to ask the difficult questions that our nation has too often avoided. We will also take you to that picturesque city where the most amazing courage and grace helped stop one of the worst days in modern American history from being inconceivably even worse. In a minute, I'm going to share my thoughts on where we as a nation are and need to go. But first, let us now go to Newtown, Connecticut, where TJ Winnick joins us with the very latest. TJ?
Good evening. Here outside the local fire station, there is yet another makeshift memorial to the victims of Sandy Hook Elementary, a school building that may possibly never reopen. The first of the funerals for the 26 innocent victims gunned down at Sandy Hook Elementary School began today. Noah Posner was the youngest victim. Just last month, he celebrated his 6th birthday, along with his twin sister, Ariel. She was in a different classroom and survived the attack. 6-year-old schoolmate Jack Pinto was also laid to rest. Jack's obituary says he, quote, died December 14, 2012 in Sandy Hook Elementary School in the company of his many friends. Officials say the scene of the massacre and gunman Adam Lanza's home are still active crime scenes. Today, vans pulled up to the school to transport some of the furniture to a temporary school for the kids 7 miles away. Hundreds of workers are prepping the unused building to open so that Sandy Hook children can resume classes.
Schools are working very closely with all the faculty, students, and parents to try to be respectful and try to resume what normalcy we can after a tragedy such as this.
Investigators are still searching for clues behind what motivated Lanza to first kill his mother in her home before going on a murderous rampage at the elementary school. Police have removed computers and videos from the home.
We did seize significant evidence at the residence. We are analyzing it.
The school massacre has reignited the contentious debate about gun control and gun rights. During a memorial service Sunday night for the victims, President Obama vowed to help end the recent string of mass murders.
These tragedies must end. And to end them, we must change.
Today, state police revealed that there were actually 2 adult survivors of the school massacre. They were both shot in the lower body. Reporting live in Newtown, Connecticut this evening, TJ Winnick, ABC News. Now back to you.
Thank you, TJ. And we're going back to Newtown pretty shortly, but first, a few thoughts. Like millions of you, I went about my daily routine this morning that included packing up the kids and dropping them off at an elementary school. I was a better dad than this past Friday, before America's latest reality, when I barked at one who forgot her lunch, another who forgot his jacket, and the oldest for just taking forever to get out the door. Routines and realities, they've changed in the last 72 hours. Givens, they're replaced by worries, and our most precious commodities, the things that we would all die for, our children, suddenly seem so fragile. Now, before the unfolding tragedy on Friday, where every hour added another chapter to an unimaginable horror story, I always viewed mass killings as a sick symptom of a disease that, I don't know why, but just seemed to affect other parts of America. Not in a town like my own, not to children that could have been my own. Newtown did everything right. The parents loved their kids, the school cared about safety, and they adored the children in it. And still, tragedy and perspective, far too often nowadays, they go hand in hand. Every American, especially those who tucked in little ones on Friday night, they know how blessed that we are. But we can't possibly imagine how those 20 families who had their insides ripped out, how they wake up to mornings without their babies. As Americans, we always seek out the light in the darkness, and Sandy Hook Elementary School had that in spades. Now, I am awed by the courage and the grace in Newtown. Now, we all throw around the label hero far too casually nowadays, but inside that school, on that horrific Friday morning, not one teacher ran, not a single one. They treated those kids like they were their own, and if we needed a symbol of what we should all aspire to be, look no further than Victoria Soto. This amazing woman, and a kid in many ways herself, she stood between the shooter and a room full of 6-year-olds, and she made the ultimate sacrifice. But tonight, I don't feel like being inspired. Tonight, like a lot of you, I am sad, but I'm angry and I'm tired of a cycle of grief, then remembrance, wringing of hands, and then repeat to the next disaster here where we have a massacre. These 20 kids, they are America's children. And if their stolen futures are met with nothing more than lit candles and stuffed teddy bears and empty words, we will have shamed their loss. By now, a familiar narrative has emerged. Sick young man, troubled family, access to firepower suitable for a battlefield, and massive loss of life, including, like all these cowards, his own. We learn his mother, too, was not all there, a survivalist with delusions of looming catastrophe and the seemingly prerequisite firepower in the house. The warning signs of Adam Lanza either dismissed or ignored. With body armor, assault weapons, and hundreds of rounds of ammunition, he laid siege to little boys and girls who are learning to read. We now learn that if not for the approaching sirens of the first responders, he likely would have moved on to the remaining classrooms and the remaining kids. So yes, I am very sad, and I said my prayers this Sunday in church, but I'm also very angry. This didn't happen in some third world outpost. This happened at a grammar school that could have been where you or me dropped off our kids. Now, I'm angry that we live in a culture that celebrates the conspiracy theorists and creates shows legitimizing their fringe end of days. I'm angry that certain networks claiming to be purveyors of fair and balanced news give shows to charlatans who warn of a gun grabber president in league with the enemy and to get ready for a race war. I'm angry at those who cut funding for mental health one day, then bemoan on Saturday how the deranged could have done this. And I'm angry at myself, me, for not having the spine to have spoken out louder and more often about permitting my country to put my kids at risk. I believe in the right to bear arms, but I didn't sign up for this. More Americans have been killed in our country this year by gun than all U.S. soldiers killed in all the years of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. You heard me right. If you've got a kid between kindergarten and the 8th grade, they are 13 times more likely to be murdered by gun than any other industrialized nation. People should not have to worry that going to a mall, a movie theater, a place of worship, or sending your child to grammar school might equate to a mass shooting. But in just the last 4 years, it has. What else has maybe you ask in the last 4 years has changed? How about unprecedented gun sales, fueled by lies and also new laws that now make it legal to, get this, bring guns into bars, churches, college campuses, and new laws that let felons and the mentally ill more easily get their guns back. Now, I know a lot of people believe it's going to be different this time because the president says so and because politicians aren't as afraid of the NRA. But I think that's BS. If we as a nation acknowledge that the gun culture has long ago crossed over into a national security issue, it will be because of 20 little 6-year-olds who reminded every last one of us that they could have been our daughters and our sons. They could have been our grandkids, our brothers, or our sisters. So yes, I hug my kids tighter. But if that's all I or you do, then I believe we have failed the best among us in Newtown, Connecticut. All right. Now, before we go to break here, I want to remind you that I'll be bringing my friends around the table or panel, but also we'll be going to Newtown after this break live. But I leave you, before we go to this commercial break, with the names of the young victims read by our president.
Let the little children come to me, Jesus said, and do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of heaven. Charlotte, Daniel, Olivia, Josephine, Anna, Dylan, Madeline, Catherine, Chase, Jesse, James, Grace, Emily, Jack, Noah, Caroline, Jessica, Benjamin, Avliel, Allison. God has called them all home.
She was the first student who ran out of the Sandy Hook School, 6.5 years old. She ran out of the school building covered in blood from head to toe. And the first words she said to her mom when she got outside was, "Mommy, I'm okay, but all of my friends are dead."
Was she the only child in that class that survived?
Yes. Of those who were left in the classroom, of first graders, she was the lone survivor. Somehow, in that moment, by God's grace, was able to act as if she was already deceased.
Unbelievable. That Pastor Jim Solomon describing how one of his parishioners, a little girl, was the lone survivor of her classroom by playing dead. Her mother told the pastor that she is suffering from survivor's guilt because so many of her friends, well, they have lost their children, but that mom has hers. This quaint little town of 1,900 people has turned into an epicenter of a nation's grief. Newtown's pain has become the nation's pain, and at the heart of it all are the children who died and those who managed to live through it.
It was peaceful, everything was fine, everything was just normal as a regular Friday morning would be to everyone, and then it all just changed.
We heard screaming.
We were like all scared. We heard a loud bang. We thought that something fell. Then we heard another. And then we thought that that was a gunshot.
We thought it was going to be like a safety drill for a second, but then we noticed it was real.
We hid in the storage room, and I actually prayed to God. Everybody was a little scared, crying, and I felt actually a little sick, and I felt like I was going to throw up.
It felt like it lasted like an hour, but it was really like maybe 20 minutes.
When I went to the fire department, when I didn't see Ethan, I was like, oh my God, what happened to my brother?
What's the hardest part?
Just that someone would murder so many people.
When I finally saw Ethan, I was very relieved.
You said earlier that you think your teacher saved your life.
Well, she saved all of us. There's 19 people in our class, and she saved all of us.
Within moments of the massacre, police, paramedics, and firefighters, they descended on Sandy Hook Elementary, hoping to save lives, and indeed, their mere presence did. It stemmed the tide of the violence as the shooter reportedly chose to take his own life and his rampage when he heard the responders approaching. But once there, those responders saw the carnage and realized there were no lives to be saved in those two classrooms.
Just kind of astonishing what they were telling me, to be prepared for. But still, there was hope that we could help people.
I think that's the toughest part, is we're trained to do this, and we wanted people. We wanted to take care of people and keep them alive, and there's nothing we could do, so.
We were there that day to do anything we could for their children, and we're there still to do anything we can for them, so.
We wish we could have done more. To see those little faces.
I think it was probably the biggest roller coaster of emotion that you could possibly have, to see one family reunite and another one still lost.
And we knew at that point that there was there wasn't going to be good news.
Some of those gorgeous little kids and those big eyes, and I mean, it's so sad. They're so innocent. They did nothing wrong. They did nothing to deserve this.
All right. We talk a lot about Newtown. Well, let's go there live now to Natalie Patterson, reporter with Fast One, who joins us. Natalie?
Thank you. I am still in the heart of Newtown, in front of one of many makeshift memorials that have been set up in this town that is still grieving such a tragic loss. People continue to pour into this town from as far away as California, Maine. We met a man today who brought his dog down to give the kids a little bit of happiness by petting his dog. Joining me right now is Tom Mahoney, a lifelong resident of this wonderful town of Newtown, and also who's been volunteering at Sandy Hook Elementary for the last 9 years in the library. Tom, thank you so much for being with us.
Well, you're very welcome.
Tell me about the children of Sandy Hook Elementary.
The kids down there, they were a great group of kids. I mean, as I told you once before, it's really had a very strong family feel. I mean, the teachers and the staff, everyone worked together, and it was homey. Let's put it that way. It was a wonderful place to volunteer, and I will do so in the future when hopefully it'll come back, or another location, whatever they decide to do.
A homey feel, a family feel. So fitting, Tom, because I think what we're hearing now are these stories of courage, these inspirational stories of the faculty that you knew well and the administrators there and their acts of courage. Tell me about Don Hochsprung and the other people who worked there. It sounded like they treated these children as their own.
They did. It was, like I said, it was very much a family operation down there, and there were a lot of parent volunteers that did a lot for the school. There's a lot of different things going on, and Dawn was, she was a very caring, loving person. I mean, always cheerful when you talk to her, and always had a kind word for everybody, and the rest of the staff too, Mary Sherlock and the rest of them, they worked hard, and they tried to help the kids as best they could, and it's just a terrible, terrible tragedy I mean, our town's like it's been turned upside down here. It's just, I still can't get my head around it. It's just senseless.
Tom, you were one of probably thousands of people who joined the president at Newtown High School last night for an interfaith vigil. There seems to be a change in the air in Newtown today in terms of people being out in the public, I want to say. Is there a difference today in how the community is treating the families and close friends of the victims?
Well, I think we've always been a close-knit community, and I think as far as the community in general, we're trying to give the families some space to grieve, which unfortunately has not been the case with some of the media, but I think that's what we need to do, and and I think most people are respectful of other people's privacy, and I mean, to lose a child is a terrible, terrible thing, especially at this time of year at Christmas, and it changes the whole family dynamic. I can't imagine. I mean, I have a grandson. I can't imagine what it would have been like to have lost him.
A lot of parents hugging their children a little tighter.
Absolutely. And even adults hugging each other at this point. I mean, today I'm in the I work here at the town hall. I'm the theater manager and the building administrator, and people are coming in and they give you a hug. It's just out of love. It's just I mean, it's been such an outpouring across the country too, on people bringing food and flowers and just calling and expressing their condolences. It's incredible. It's a nice feeling to know that there's others out there that really care that much, and it's.
Thank you. Tom Mahoney, lifelong resident of Newtown. Our thoughts and prayers are with you and your family and your town as you try to heal. Thank you for being with us.
Oh, thank you very much.
That.
I appreciate it.
As Tom mentioned, this town is giving the families some room to grieve and process their losses, but this is still a town that is trying to heal and themselves coming together, laying flowers at makeshift memorials like what you see behind me. For now, back to you.
Thank you very much, Natalie. All right, let me bring in my table. We've got three of my friends here tonight. We've got Tom Doherty, former advisor to Governor George Pataki, Dominic Carter, journalist and author, and Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. Let's first just talk about, we talk about the people who descended there, and it's not too much to say from what we know now, Tom. The guy had hundreds of rounds of ammo. They believe, Governor Malloy was talking about this, that the intention was he was going to move classroom to classroom, and the approaching sirens, how fast they responded. And then we forget, a lot of these are volunteer firefighters, which is guys like you and me who at the weekend help out whatever their town is. They encounter 20, I call them babies, right. 6 years old. And they apparently wouldn't even show in training videos stuff like this because it would so traumatize people that would be going into this. It's just inconceivable what they must have descended upon.
Absolutely, and heartbreaking for them as well. The thought that, as we were talking off the air about, state police who have been doing this for years, the effect that this has had in seeing that type of carnage. As you said, this is a volunteer who during the day is selling life insurance and walks into that situation. I don't know how you deal with that. I think that they're going to need counseling going forward themselves. And it's heartbreaking that I think that the effects, obviously, on the families, but I think we're going to see layers of this that are going to move from the volunteers and from the teachers' families and just the police officers involved, the coroner's office. I mean, I can't imagine a situation. We said, I mean, how do you take a weapon and kill a child? And then to see it just 20 times over is gut-wrenching.
Dominic, we've done too many of these. We've seen it happen at college campuses, like we said, at Virginia Tech, at Columbine, at a high school, at a mall. We've seen it at at a house of worship in Wisconsin. But I don't know about you. I've never seen the reaction to what we've seen here because they had little babies. And I've seen this in the political reaction or lack thereof from a lot of folks. I've seen people say it's changed me, what they saw. Have you ever seen kind of the outpouring because of really who the victims were?
No, and just to piggyback, if you will, Richard, on what Tom just said, I don't think the first responders and those volunteer firefighters and so on, and those outstanding teachers that put their lives on the line to protect these babies, I don't think they'll ever get over this. They had counseling there for, imagine a classroom with all of these babies shot dead. Now, we can deal with the mental illness aspect in 1 second, or when we get to it, of the man that did this. But I honestly feel that our elected officials are almost embarrassed. That's why I think that they're coming out as strongly as they are, because they've waited so long to do something. And now we have babies that are dead. Babies, days before Christmas.
And I think everybody, I got a 6-year-old, you can just, it was visceral, where you thought of your kid. I don't care how old your kid is. I know you're big and you too. You just thought about your kid, and then it just, like a pit in your stomach, and then you say, Newtown, for crying out loud, they did everything right. They did, you had a principal you dream of.
Richard, those teachers,
oh my gosh,
they're angels.
Everybody says
those
it, but
teachers are sent from
ran.
God. Not one ran. And they basically said, you can take my life, but you're not going to touch my babies.
Well, because it goes back to the old, as a parent, it's the old maternal, certainly, and paternal, you protect your children. And those are their children on a daily basis. And so, I am not shocked when someone says a principal ran into the hallway or a teacher. I think that is their natural instinct as parents. I think the vast majority of them were parents. Put any of us as a parent in this room. That is what I think has hit everybody so hard, is that as parents, the thing that we fear the most, we fear from day one, is having to bury our child. It's the thing we fear, the thing that has woken me up at night or whatever the case is. And so they are certainly heroes, but to ask why they did it, we know why they did it. They did it because that's what's inside of them.
I can imagine you guys have hit this, I haven't yet. when your kid's 17, he's going out with a car and stuff, and you swallow hard, but not when you're putting your kid to kindergarten or first grade.
Right.
It's just. Right. And Andrew, you were in another part of the country this week, but I assume reaction's been universal wherever. This isn't a this happened out west, or this is a rural or a city thing. This is in every town in America. This is a Rembrandt picture.
That's part of it. That's part of what's so gut-wrenching. That's part of why this is impacting people, I think, on a level we haven't seen before. It's that Newtown is the place where you go to try to avoid or escape the dangers of what you think is confined to an inner city. And it's a small town, it's an old town, it's a town where so many people seem to know each other, but you know, it just reinforces the fact that there is no place you can go. There is no place where you're totally safe in this country from this sort of thing happening, and you never know when, you never know where. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's resonating as much as it is.
You know what, out of people, it hit so close to home, whether you're in Connecticut or somewhere else, that if it happened there, where can it happen exactly? We take a quick break, everybody. Okay, when we come back, whether or not it's time for a serious national conversation about guns, we're going to have one right now. Stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back.
It just doesn't even seem real. I mean, I'm still like, really? I mean, here in Newtown, in this small town, and you know, you read about this everywhere else but here, and it's just it's heart-wrenching for the children and for the parents and grandparents and everybody.
It feels like a dream, and a bad dream.
It feels it's a nightmare.
Can we say that we're truly doing enough to give all the children of this country the chance they deserve to live out their lives in happiness and with purpose? We're not doing enough, and we will have to change.
Newtown, certainly through no choice of its own, has become the center of a national conversation when it comes to guns. It is the latest, as we said, in a long string of mass shootings that our country has suffered through. And after each one, there's a closer look at the high-powered guns used in the attacks. And after each attack, we noticed a very strange and an eerie symmetry. Andrew, been taking a look at the prevalence of these shootings and some of the commonalities along with them.
And it's a story that we've had to report on so many times, Rich. Adam Lanza, the shooter in Newtown, now joins the ranks of Jared Loeffner, James Holmes, Sun Hui Cho, and so many others from so many other incidents. But will the aftermath of this tragedy be different? Will this massacre in Newtown fundamentally change the narrative? Only time will tell. In the meantime, gun enthusiasts, they're stocking up. The statistics are staggering. On Black Friday, U.S. shoppers weren't just buying toys and electronics, they were also buying guns, and in record numbers. On that single day, the FBI did computerized background checks on more than 154,000 firearms purchases. And in November alone, Americans bought a whopping 2 million guns. Additional facts that may surprise you: there are more registered gun dealers and stores than major supermarkets, more gun sellers than McDonald's restaurants. The overwhelming majority of gun users are law-abiding citizens. But authorities say the millions of guns in circulation guarantee that disturbed people will often be able to obtain them.
And roughly how many gun dealers are in this area?
There are about 400 gun dealers in a 4-county area. Just within 10 miles of the incident, there are 36 gun dealers.
In the case of Adam Lanza, law enforcement sources say the handguns and assault rifle used in the shooting were bought legally.
In America, unless you have a felony conviction or you're adjudicated by a court to be mentally incompetent, you have ready access to firearms.
Lanza now joins the ranks of mass shooters Jared Lee Loeffner, James Holmes, and the Virginia Tech shooter. And now the nation is left with a perplexing question. How do you keep weapons from men like this when there are an estimated 200 million guns already in circulation? And if those numbers weren't staggering enough, there were reports of long lines and even runs on some gun shops across the country, all in the days following the shooting in Newtown. Rich?
And for more, I want to bring in our next guest, Richard Aborn. He's the president of Citizens Crime Commission of New York City. Mr. Aborn's also the former president of Handgun Control Incorporated, which is now known as the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence. Mr. Aborn, thank you for a few minutes.
My pleasure.
Simply put, Richard, 20 babies. Does that equate a tipping point in this debate that we've talked about seemingly forever? Is there going to be enough momentum, you think, that whether it's Washington or the public finally does something more than gnash its teeth and wring its hands?
Well, your question perfectly captures the dilemma. Unfortunately, tragically, in a way that we can't comprehend, this may in fact be the tipping point, but it will completely depend on the American people. If the American people keep the kind of pressure up that we've seen in the last 48, 72 hours, then yes, we're going to get action out of Washington. I think the president is very close to doing something very supportive. He was quite clear last night that he's had it, and I think we've all had it. And it's not a time to mince words. We have to be direct with our leaders in Washington. They really have to lead, and the only way that's going to happen is if the American people keep up this pressure.
You know, Richard, over the weekend, folks that aren't even overly politically involved or motivated, they saw the pictures of the kids and they saw their own son or daughter. And as you said, the word enough I heard quite a bit. That said, you know it always happens now. After the immediate grief and the rage, then it says, well, this is hard, if not really complex. Even if we stop all the, let's say, assault weapons from getting manufactured or sent out to the public, there's still so many guns out there, you can't stop everything. And already I'm seeing some congressmen saying, hey, why don't we arm the teachers here? That would have stopped everything. That whole common narrative is, albeit slowly, it's starting to creep back into it. How do we get from where we are now to some meaningful changes that don't go into the whole gun-grabbing BS that you and I both know this isn't about?
So one of the things we have to do is just reject the nonsense that there's nothing we can do, because there's a lot that we can do. Every single time we pass a gun control law, every single time law enforcement steps up its activity, every single time a state takes on this issue, we save lives. And if we had an hour, I could walk you through each and every example. It is nonsense that there's nothing we can do. We banned assault weapons in 1994. By the time those assault weapons had started to disappear, the Congress, in its infinite wisdom, decided to put those guns back on the street. That was wrong. That was morally reprehensible. They need to take them back off the street. The same thing for these large capacity magazines. In every single mass shooting we've seen, including in Newtown just last Friday, these large capacity magazines have been used. Let's get those off the streets. And then let's tighten up the conditions under which people can buy guns. Right now, 40% of all the gun sales in the United States are done without a background check. That's ludicrous. All gun shows should go through a background check. How do we do that? We close what we call the gun show loophole. That would have an enormous impact. And then, yes, we need to make sure that mental health records are in the National Instant Check System, so that if somebody who has a mental health history goes to buy a gun, they are stopped because of their mental health history.
You know, Richard, every time there's been a mass shooting, there's a direct connection where people run out to get guns. Without boring everybody with all the data, in short, we got more guns than people in this country. Out of every gun made in the world, more than half of them are bought in the U.S. It's a culture thing. And how, if it ever, does that change?
So you ask a very important question, and I need to be clear about this. The reality is the vast majority of gun owners are law-abiding, decent citizens who will never use a gun improperly. And frankly, they need to speak up as well, because they are beginning to be tarnished, and I think unfairly, as being part of the problem here. So yes, there are some 350 million guns in this country, but by and large, they will never harm anyone. We have to focus on those that should not have a gun. And those that should not have a gun generally go into either the legal or the illegal market to get those guns. They're not breaking into people's homes to get them. Well, the reality is we have no interest in banning all guns. There's no need to ban all guns. There's zero purpose served by banning all guns. We need to focus on illegal guns, and people with mental health issues are getting access to guns.
Hey, Richard, finally, the people I always thought that should be as outraged, even more than you or me about this, should be both law enforcement and then also responsible gun owners who are getting tarred here because of the irresponsible actions of others. Are you guys going to reach out to those people to say, no one's doing a gun grab here, but you guys more than anybody else should insist here that you have to get a license, that you got to be able to show that you can use this weapon properly here and keep the people that shouldn't have them from ever getting them in the first place? If we get those people to be the most vocal for change here, then we get change in this country.
Yes, you're exactly right. So I led the Brady campaign during the fight over the original ban on assault weapons, the Brady bill, excuse me, and the ban on large capacity clips. The reason we were able to beat the NRA and pass those bills is because we assembled a very broad coalition that included law enforcement. Law enforcement was front and center in the gun control debate in this country. Why? Because they know better than anybody else in this world the havoc that guns reap every single day. I was a homicide prosecutor in this town. I know what guns do. So law enforcement, I am sure, will be back out there again. Gun owners are beginning to make themselves known for exactly the reason you said. Most of them are very responsible and don't want to be tarred with this. And if you look at the polling of gun owners, you see increasing support for these sorts of reasonable measures. So gun owners have got to get out there and say, there's nothing inconsistent with regulating guns so we keep them away from criminals and people with mental health issues, while at the same time allowing law-abiding citizens to get possession of guns under circumstances. Yes, you should have to get a license, you should have to go through safety training, that weapon should be registered, and that weapon should be locked up. Those are not unreasonable things to ask for, and I believe increasingly gun owners are going to say, yes, that's the right thing to do.
Richard Aborn, thank you very much for a few minutes. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, anytime.
All right, we're going to jump to a quick break. When we come back, we're going to bring the table in and talk about concrete examples of what can be done in this political climate to try and keep guns out of the hands of dangerous individuals. Stay with us.
They keep saying on the TV, oh, Newtown's such a nice town. It doesn't matter, nice town, not a nice town. It could happen anywhere.
I think it should be illegal to have a weapon whose only purpose is to kill large numbers of people. I think it should be illegal to sell bullets whose only purpose is to pierce armored vests. The last time I saw a deer wearing an armored vest was a long time ago.
Very feisty mayor, jumping people who were trying to do devil's advocate with him. Hey, Dominic, he got into a lot of things. We can bring up now a few of the proposals that may be some common ground on, including background checks. And I can't believe we're having a debate over whether or not you should be able to buy a gun if you're on a terror watch list. But you think this is just the New York City mayor, you know, from the big city that doesn't resonate outside of New York? Or it makes sense to me, you know, the idea, not just the assault weapon ban, but being able to buy a body armor. I mean, come on.
Well,
you think this plays outside New York?
In the past, people like Mayor Bloomberg, for all of his money, they were completely ignored, completely by NRA supporters. The bottom line here, Richard, is, and no offense to Tom, but the NRA owns the Republican Party, and they've intimidated the Democratic Party so much that they've beat them into submission. Until that stops, all of this is noise. Well, Tom, different this time, though, with children.
I'm hearing that January 3rd, first day that the new Senate, new Congress gets back into session, not just Feinstein, she said, and I got a lot of co-sponsors, the Intimate Nations, a lot of Republicans. I saw some lawmakers coming out saying this changed me. I just get the sense they're not going to have as much of an uphill fight on the assault weapons ban as maybe people would have thought a month ago. You buy that?
I do, but I think that what we need to start is the list that Andrew just put on the board. Let's start with the overwhelming number of common sense proposals that we should put in place immediately.
And just not to interrupt you, but 3/4 of members of the NRA support background checks.
Of course.
So it's not like it's that tough a sell.
It's not a tough sell. It's not a tough sell to deal with the mental health issues. There is no reasonable person who would say that you should be able to buy a weapon on Craigslist. We agree. Let's find the immediate places we agree. Now back to Dominic, because I don't know why I was a friend of the NRA, but
no, I'm not saying you're a friend of the
my
NRA.
Party, because
look at history.
Listen. The president has an incredible opportunity ahead of him to not only heal a country but make us better as a society. Over the last 4 years, our Democratic president signed 2 pieces of gun legislation.
Well, how many did the Republicans?
Dominic,
he just took it because the president is not a fool.
Dominic,
why would he take on a losing battle?
Dominic, I'm not pointing a finger at him. I want to move forward, but let's look at where we've been. When you
what did the Republicans put up? What did the Republicans put up?
He's the president of the United States. I'm just
He
making
can
a
do
point.
it all by himself now.
Okay, Dominic, listen. If you want to accuse me of being the NRA, listen to the facts.
I'm not accusing
He
you.
signed a national park conceal and carry law.
He sure did.
And he allowed people who check bags on Amtrak to have a concealed weapon in their gun as long as the bag's checked. That's the extent of his guns. So, and he got elected overwhelmingly. Now is his time, and I'm willing to jump on board and say, bring me with you. Let's solve this problem together. Let's stop calling names. Everything that Andrew just put on that screen, we can all agree on as Americans.
And Andrew, you know I'm heavy here, but my question, you think he's going to follow through with the words, and you think Washington's going to go along?
I think he's going to try to follow through. My fear for action is we're a short attention span country. You know,
December 17th to January 3rd. Doesn't sound like a long time.
Last week we were talking about Hurricane Sandy. Now nobody's talking about that. Everybody's talking about Newtown. What happens between now and January 3rd? Is there still that political will?
Andrew, you have the ability, you have this show, it's an issue for Richard. Use the platform and don't let people forget what happened. Don't talk about talk about this consistently, because there are things you just brought up that we can all agree on, and let's get to things we agree on.
Can we agree on the ban? Can we agree on the ban?
No, I can't.
See,
but
that's the problem.
Because you know why?
That's the problem.
No, but that's not tomorrow morning. That I can tell you that there's no reason that I can't be persuaded
We can debate
to that.
one.
But
you know
those are the immediate ones that we can say
Right.
immediately. Prosecute the illegal gun sellers. Do all the things that Andrew just talked about. Let's then go to the next step if needed. That's all.
We'll debate that end part, but I think Tom's right that people be surprised. There's more things that can be done, I think, sooner than later. And I think there are some other fights that need to be had, even if not everyone's going to go along with it. But I think now's the time for the president to follow through on the words. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
If he had cut himself or hurt himself, he would not know it or feel it. He would have periods of times when he would withdraw entirely unto himself, pretty much episodes. You would have to work hard to reach him again.
The principal of the school was running toward the shooter in order to protect her students.
This woman was literally the life of the entire school. She was the rock.
Talk about a lot of bad stuff, and that's what this story is, the definition of tragedy. But there were people that we've talked about tonight that we hoped we would all do in the same kind of circumstance. Dawn Hawksprung, principal of Sandy Hook Elementary. She gave her life to try and protect her students. In the midst of our grief over the massacre at Sandy Hook and the lingering questions about why it all happened and what more needs and can be done to prevent more tragedies like it, it can be kind of easy to overlook one important fact, that what happened Friday, it could have been so much worse, and that it likely would have been had it not been for the efforts of some everyday people who deserve to be remembered. And this is an overused term, but in this case, it doesn't even come close to describe them as heroes. And Andrew, their stories certainly deserve to be told here.
Yeah, Rich, and some of these heroes are no longer with us. They were among the victims Friday, while the others certainly do deserve recognition, as do they all, for what they've done. Put in the lives of the children of Sandy Hook Elementary before their own, and doing so amidst the most incomprehensible of circumstances.
Is there any way to know how many lives she saved?
You know, I don't know accurately. I heard 14.
He's talking about 27-year-old first-grade teacher Vicky Soto, who lost her own life protecting her students from the gunman by locking them in a closet and telling the shooter they were on another side of the building.
Does it surprise you that she was found
Absolutely
huddled
not.
over with those kids?
No, absolutely not.
Principal Dawn Hawksprung and school psychologist Mary Sherlock were killed after confronting the gunman.
They responded as we all hope we might respond in such terrifying circumstances.
Lisa Stone was a dear friend of special education teacher Rachel Davino. Now Lisa, who's a funeral director, has the painful task of burying her friend.
I thought we were all gonna die.
First grade teacher Caitlin Roig told Diane Sawyer she locked her class of 15 in a tiny bathroom.
So I said, no, we just have to be absolutely quiet. I said, there are bad guys out there now. We need to wait for the good guys.
Down the hall, students in Terry Alves' third grade class first heard the gunshots over the intercom.
She locked the door and taped a piece of white tape over the window of the door. And then she told us to go in the corner.
Pregnant and due with a baby any day, Alves tried to keep her class calm.
We kept hearing gun noises and put your hands up, and we just kept hearing that. She's just saying it's gonna be okay, just be quiet. We were in the corner all crouched in, and all the girls were crying, a couple of boys, and the boys were like, they had their eyes wide open watching everything. She was crying, and I thought she was screaming. That's what we heard over the loudspeaker. We heard kids crying. I want to say when you saved my life. There are 19 people in our class, and she saved all of us.
About out of time, guys. Obviously, we're just starting with a story here, but breaks your heart. Andrew, Dominic, Tom, guys, thank you very much. As Tom said, this is a story that is just beginning its coverage, and we need national dialogue. We'll continue that tomorrow at 6 p.m. See you then.